doing? Okay, why don't you sit right there? Let me introduce you. You done?
I was thinking of a pilot program too. That's in fact what I was going to suggest.
And what you doing?
Well, because we have to discuss that ordinance. So the table.
Anyway, yeah, he told me that, I just said, you know, he said A was happened and B, really feels like he handled his last planning board appearance badly.
You think? And you're going for a week.
Citizenship in the community, right?
Oh, he's right up there.
You know what? You know what? I bet you.
Yeah,
I bet you.
mostly.
I bet you.
Yeah, mostly. Mostly. Good evening, everyone. We're going to ask you to stand in just a moment for the Pledge of Allegiance, but also at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd ask if you would stand for a moment of silence for Bridget Hobbs, retired longtime employee, Registrar of Vital Statistics, Maplewood Police Records Bureau Clerk. So we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence for Bridget Hobbs. And to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, we have Jack Longnecker, Troop 17. Jack, come on up. Jack is an Eagle Scout candidate, and he is going for his citizenship in the community merit. So Jack, if you'd lead us in the flag right here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence for Bridget Hobbs. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jack. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board in the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2014 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2013, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier?
Here.
Mr. Leventhal?
Here.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desired this governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in a formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to February's 4th meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. This is a pretty jam-packed agenda. And by the way, if you need an agenda, we have some up here on the clerk's office. You can just feel free to come up and grab a copy. We have the first order of business is Mrs. Larrier will read the proclamation for Black History Month. After that, our prosecutor is going to be introducing our alternate prosecutor. Is that correct? Designated. Okay. And then after that, we have our first public comment period. Now, some of you may be here to talk about the trap, neuter, release program. That comes up during the Board of Health meeting. So if you have an agenda, that will be in item number 8. So you would hold off in speaking about that until we get to item number 8. We'll have a Board of Health meeting, and we'll invite anyone who wants to come up to speak about that or any other Board of Health matters. We'll ask you to come up during item number 8. Some of you might be here to talk about the ordinance we have on final passage, which designates the former Women's Club as a local historic landmark. If you're here to speak about that, we'll ask you to come up during item number 10. And I'll prompt you as we go along so that you don't get lost. If you're here to speak about vehicles and traffic on the Irvington Town line on Elmwood Avenue, that would be item number 11. We'll ask you to come up at that time. And if you're here to speak about vehicles and traffic, and that would be restricted parking on Clinton Avenue, then that would be item number 12. And we'd ask you to come up at that time. Now, if you're here for any other reason, like Brook Path, that is, you can come up to speak during the first public comment period. If you hear about anything else, you can also come up during the first public comment period. Other than those things I mentioned, you can come up during the first public comment period, and we also have another public comment period. We also are going to have a presentation tonight on Maple Woodstock, 2014 Maple Woodstock, and their annual request to sell beer and wine at the event. So after we get through the first public comment period, the Board of Health, the presentation, the 3 ordinances on final, then we go to discussion items, and that's where we will be discussing the Brook Path issue. So you can talk about it earlier, but then at that point, the Township Committee will be discussing that issue. We'll also be giving an update on the redevelopment projects for the post office and PSE&G sites. We have 2 other discussion items. One is asking to the state to extend the 2% cap on interest arbitration awards, and the 4th is to discuss recreation seasonal salary ordinances and also a recreation fee resolution. We have a consent agenda, and on that agenda we'll be approving bills and claims, declaring that the township is fully compliant with our affordable housing obligations, applying for a grant for alcoholism and drug abuse. Let's see what else we're going to be doing. Emergency appropriations. We'll be approving a contract for improvements of the toilets at the municipal pool and approval of minutes. Some of this stuff is very exciting. Then we'll have our second public comment period, so if anyone wants to stick around or you felt something you saw or heard in the meeting, you want to come back and talk to us, we have another public comment period at the end. After that, we'll have reports from departments, administrative reports, and reports from elected officials. So, again, I will prompt you as we go along. And the first is I'm going to prompt my colleague, Mrs. Larrier, to do the resolution on Black History Month.
Good evening. It is my honor to read this resolution from the Township of Maplewood. Whereas nationally, February has been designated as the month to highlight contributions of African Americans, and whereas there have been millions of African Americans who worked, fought, and sacrificed to create a better America, and whereas African Americans for centuries have made significant contributions in fields such as business, education, politics, athletics, science, nutrition, medicine, and the arts, and whereas African American leaders have played a significant role in altering the course of history through marching, testifying, and teaching, and whereas among the roster of world-class achievers are those who have served as human rights pioneers such as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Frederick Douglass, a former slave and abolitionist, educators, Mary McLeod Bethune, Booker T. Washington, businesswoman Sarah Madam C.J. Walker, inspiring artists such as Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, and Paul Robeson, literary scholars Langston Hughes and James Baldwin, a hero in the field of law and jurisprudence, Thurgood Marshall, as well as the first African American honored on a U.S. postal stamp, Harriet Tubman, a leader in the Underground Railroad. And whereas it is important to the survival of this country that we recognize and celebrate the achievements of all those who have improved and enriched our lives, and whereas February is designated as Black History Month in the Township of Maplewood and throughout the country, now, therefore be it resolved that Mayor Vic DeLuca of the Township of Maplewood, on behalf of my colleagues, the Township Committee, does hereby proclaim the month of February 2014 as Black History Month in the Township of Maplewood, and in so doing, recognize the contributions of African Americans, and that we as a society pause and reflect upon the value of these contributions to us all. And I would just make mention of the fact that because of many of the sacrifices that African Americans have taken over the course of history, I stand here today. My colleague Marlon Brownlee is here, and many people in Maplewood have made great strides, in fact, all over the country. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see our prosecutors, so we'll move forward. One other thing is that we have the school board president coming probably in about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and we're going to slot her in to give us make a request of supporting the effort to get some more funding for the South Orange Maplewood School District. We thought no one would mind if we had to break for that for a minute. Are we set or no? No. Okay. So we are going to move to the first public comment. This is item number 7. And again, if you'd like to speak on an item other than the ordinances or the trap neuter release, we ask you to come up. If you could fix that, go the other way. We ask you to come up and give us your name and address and share your words with us. And we're going to limit it to 3 minutes apiece. So, sir, you can come on up.
Good evening. My name is George Stafford. My address is 16 Kitchell Avenue in Wharton, New Jersey. I'm here tonight as the outreach director for the New Jersey Highlands Coalition to ask, in fact, to urge your council to consider a resolution of support the New Jersey 2004 Highlands Water Protection and Planning Act, which, as a group who monitors what goes on in the Highlands and the actions of the Highlands Council, we consider to be under severe attack in the Highlands. I usually open my brief presentations by saying that there's 2 ways to get water from the Highlands. You can get it through the tap, or it can come through your basement window. I don't know that Maplewood is one of the towns. That goes over a lot better in places like Wayne and Boundbrook than it does in Maplewood or North Caldwell. There has been, the Highlands Act was passed to do several things, and one of them, most importantly, was to protect the water resources of over 60% of the people of the state of New Jersey that comes out of the Highlands. There have been there's a lot of pressure on the Highlands Council to make workarounds, waiver rules, different things to get away from the regulations that protect the water. You may have noticed that a week or 2 ago, the Assembly passed, the state legislature passed the Dirty Water Bill, which means that we are not going to go forward with getting the standards for groundwater up to EPA level as we had hoped to do. At any rate, 2 of the things that are going on in the Highlands is there's a major claim that there has been economic disaster brought on by the regulations in the Highlands Act. And as a former tax commissioner in Morris County, I did a little study of the 88 towns in the Highlands to see how values had been affected since the Highlands Act was passed in 2004. There have been real estate value losses in the Highlands from 2008 to around 2011. Well, they have been everywhere. But in the years following the passage of the act, just like every place else with the real estate bubble, values went through the roof, peaked, they fell off after 2009, 2010, and now, thankfully, they're starting to rise. No effect by the act, but values were affected, of course, by the financial crisis and the real estate bubble. The other thing, and I'll just briefly read this, there's another resolution that's going around that was passed by Powhatan Township asking the state legislature to create a tax, a fee, for communities like yours that receive water from the Highlands to compensate them for the alleged losses that they have had in economics due to the economic disaster brought on by the Highlands Act, which is a fiction. So I have 8 copies of our simple resolution here. When I came on board with the coalition, it was 950 words, but as a former town councilman in the borough of Wharton, I knew that nobody was going to read a resolution that long. So it's down to 165 words, and it's on one page. And on the bottom of the page is my contact information if you have any questions. If you have any questions now, I'd be happy to answer them, and if not, I'll leave my resolutions and other information with your clerk.
Great. I think what we'll do is refer this to our environmental committee, which is meeting a week from this Thursday, 13th, I think it is. And we'll take a look at it, and then they will make a recommendation to us.
Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee? I know some of you had a question about waste management. This is the time to bring it up.
Thanks. Okay.
Hi, my name is Nancy Regal. I reside at 100 Lexington Avenue in Maplewood. My concern is that Waste Management is charging a fuel environmental charge of $17.45. And my concern is that when I call them, every time I call there, someone's giving me a different answer, and it's not across the board. I know of 5 people in my area who are not getting charged with it. So my concern is every time I call there, I'm getting different information, and of course, they can't go into different accounts to find out why certain people are getting charged and certain people are not. If it's across the board, then everyone should get charged. But it's not happening that way. So my concern is that this is a very steep fee to add to what we originally are paying for pickup for garbage. And my concern is that how come certain people are getting charged and certain people are not?
Well, do we know anything about this? Yeah, the rates for garbage pickup are controlled by the New Jersey State Board of Public Utilities, so we can inquire as to what the charge is for and who it's applied to.
Right.
But this is the first I'm hearing of it. You haven't heard anything on the solid waste side of it?
And what they're saying is depending on the gas prices, this can go up or it can go down.
They would have to clear this with the Board of Public Utilities, I would think, right? Any tariff would have to be approved there, and even a contingency like a fuel charge, there'd have to be some approval there, and we'd be able to track it down and see what it is, so.
Can we get a copy of the bill that has this?
Sure. I have
Sure. Good.
a copy of it. I don't have a copy, this is the original, so I'd like to.
We can make a copy.
Okay, and also they're charging an administration fee, which is $4, which they want to go paperless. But again, it's not across the board. I know 4 or 5 people in my area that are not getting charged for it. So if it's across the board, like I'm saying, it should be for all Maplewood residents who are using waste management. But if it's not, how come certain people are getting the charge and certain people are not?
Okay. We'll check it out,
Okay,
and then we can get back to you.
thank you.
And we can announce publicly at the next meeting what we found.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee? Anyone want to talk to us about Brook Lane? You do? Well, now's the time to come up.
I am Susan Mank at 25 Woodland Road, and our house is directly next to the path, the side of our house. So we were very concerned, my husband Christoph and I were very concerned with the tree removal because it provides for us like a natural fence, both visually, and it gives some amount of privacy. I know that there are going to be about 72 trees removed, and we don't object to that, but upwards of 10 to 15 of them are right along our lot line. And as I said, they do provide sort of a fence, a psychological fence as well. And I want to make sure that the trees and shrubs that are replaced don't leave a big gap in that fence, and that they will be positioned thought and care to the ones that are already there. Particular at the end of the trail as well. There's a big, larger sized tree, so.
Right. I saw your picture. You had the picture with
The X's, yeah.
yeah, and then I was up there Sunday, took a walk and saw exactly what you're talking about. So we want to move this forward, but we're trying to respond. I did send down an email that
Yes.
explained more about the planting.
That was helpful.
There are going to be 30 trees put back. And some of those trees that we call trees are really just, very small, thin. But I understand what you're talking about, the larger trees.
It's more a privacy and visual, and as I said, a psychological factor, because they prevent people from walking over into our yard.
Right, it's a
as
boundary
well.
issue, right?
Yeah, so that's my concern.
So we can certainly work with you and talk with you, because you're right there on that entrance there, and we can work with you, and the Garden Club can talk about what's possible and how we can address your concerns.
Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? You got to come up here. That's the only rule. You have to come up and tell us who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Holacek, 24 Woodland Road. It was property 55 on the last diagram that we saw. My home faces the entrance to Brook Lane, as we're calling it now. And my concern is the same as the young lady that just spoke, my neighbor, is not a question of invasive species, but the removal of those an invasion of privacy. From where I exist in my home, I look right down the beginning of the lane there. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, my hope is that it won't be developed in such a way that it opens it up to make the lights and the open area more visible than it is now to my home, because the way it's been the entire time that I've been here for 27 years is having a nice frieze of not only indigenous and would have been called intrusive or invasive plants, but a covering, a screen, if you will, of privacy. And I'd like to try to maintain that if possible.
Okay.
So basically, that's my biggest interest.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? I hope you're all here for cats, because Mrs. Larrier runs that part of the meeting. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee now? We will have another time later. If not, we're going to close the first public comment period, and that will be it. Okay. Now we're going to move into our monthly Board of Health meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Law, 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2014 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2013, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca?
Here.
Mr. Leventhal? Here. Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier?
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the Maplewood Board of Health has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas it's the desire of the Maplewood Board of Health to comply with the provisions of this Act, same time and conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Board of Health of the Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the Board of Health by the public, except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussion of the Board of Health at all of its regular meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to the February edition of the Board of Health. We will, what I'd like to do is entertain a motion to accept the minutes. You all received the minutes?
Move the approval of the January 7th minutes.
Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Thanks.
And now we will have our discussion regarding the trap, neuter, and release program for cat colonies. Can I ask Mr. Rowe to come up? Did everyone receive the copy of the draft ordinance
Yes.
from? I guess I would start with my own comment that after hearing the presentation last month and then reading over the material again and considering the issue that we have here in Maplewood with feral cats, I'm inclined to believe that we need to do something to at least stem the population a little bit. So for my own part, when I enter into these discussions, I guess I'm coming at it with a little bit of a bent that maybe it's something that we might need to consider. Did anybody else have a comment on that?
I mean, the presentation that we got when we had our guest speaker seemed eminently sensible and reasonable. I mean, as long as this ordinance isn't too onerous and I can understand how it would work, I'd be inclined to forward with something like this. I just want to, make sure I understand all the ins and outs of it.
Any other comments?
I'd like to hear from Mr. Rowe.
Rowe?
Okay, since the presentation last month, I've been studying the matter a little more thoroughly than I had in the past. Not a day goes by at the health department that we don't get some sort of complaint about stray cats. In looking through information, some of the best information I saw was from the New York City Feral Cat Initiative. And being New York City, they're very organized. They seem to have lots of the problems that we thought that we might have in drafting ordinance thought out and planned out. It's a very well-organized campaign to reduce feral cats in New York City, and it's done very professionally, and it's run by volunteer organizations, but it's done very professionally. So I think what we should try to do is, when we had the chicken ordinance, we had a bunch of meetings ahead of time, and we kind of came up with rules that seemed reasonable and that we did a pilot project. So I'm thinking we might want to do the same thing here. For example, some of the rules are from the New York Feral Cat Initiative, or they have training classes. So if you're going to be a feral cat colony tender, you need to take a training class. They have methods to minimize the impact on neighbors where there's feral cat colonies, and they also seek to get cooperation of neighbors. So it's just not one person feeding them and the neighbors are all against it. It's people working together. Our Ms. Lerner last month talked about forming a nonprofit organization to help run the program, and I think maybe that's what we need to do in Maplewood, so that we have an organized effort and not just lots of different people doing different things. And of course, the health department and the township would be glad to work with that nonprofit to run it in as organized and non-intrusive and as effective way we can. So it would be largely volunteer-driven and volunteer-enforced. And then just a final note, we've been having a lot of, the Humane Society's been coming every month and doing low-cost spay-neutering, and particularly low-cost for cats. So we'd want to continue that program, and perhaps we could also expand it to work with local vets or maybe the Jersey Animal Coalition. And so I think if we put our heads together, we could come up with a more comprehensive plan that we could all live with and that would be effective and would not intrude upon the neighbors where this area is, where the feral cat colonies are going to be tendered.
Two questions come to mind, Mr. Rowe. One regarding the nonprofit. From where might we, when you say volunteers, if you have a nonprofit, and correct me if I'm wrong, that requires a 501c3 and some real hefty organizing, doesn't it?
Everything is relative, but yes. The answer is yes. I mean, you can form a non-for-profit corporation in the state of New Jersey basically by just filing papers. The real issue is if you're going to go out and fundraise and you want the contributions to be tax exempt, then you have to do a 501c3 filing with the federal government, the IRS, to get that designation. But the creation of a not-for-profit corporation that isn't going to be concerned about fundraising, although my sense is this would probably develop into that, would require that there be a federal filing, yes.
Which requires trustees and all that, right?
Yeah.
I think in New Jersey, you have to have 3 to start, 3 trustees.
Okay.
And you file with the Secretary of State. And you'll have to file federal. The only reason you file federal is if you want the designation, as Mr. Desiderio said. But that can come later. It's fairly simple to set up a not-for-profit organization, state.
Because ostensibly, they would have to raise money because somebody has to pay to neuter these animals, correct? So unless it's coming out of pocket, they would likely need to raise money and file for grants and such. Do you have the ordinance from New York or the program from New York?
I have some, well, it's a larger, they have a great website. It's called the New York Feral Cat Initiative, and it's in all the boroughs of New York, and they have lots of, on their website, they have lots of information about how to run feral cat colonies, do's and don'ts, how to enlist support of neighbors. It's really very comprehensive. I think we should look closely at it and take the parts of it that we think will work in Maplewood and apply them to Maplewood.
Mr. Ryan?
So when we had our presentation here, one of the things that she said was that it's most effective if there's some organization that's formed, whether it's a nonprofit or whatever. But it seems to me, just from our standpoint, it'd be a lot easier if there was like a single point of contact to go to. If there's a group of people who want to organize to do this, great. Let's structure things so that we have an arrangement with a group. One group of people to work with, one group of people to coordinate with, rather than licensing individual people piecemeal. And frankly, I don't know how I would figure out what the criteria are for figuring out who gets to be licensed and who doesn't. Let somebody form a nonprofit according to guidelines that have been used in other places, and let's allow that nonprofit to be exempt from the feeding strays rule, and then I just, that feels easier to me than let's do a pilot with 50 people or, neighbor approval and all that kind of stuff.
I agree.
I mean, I think, you pointed out the chicken thing, and honestly, I mean, it's been a success. I think we overkilled it a little bit. And maybe we don't need to overkill it on this one.
We don't kill the chickens.
Well, we don't kill, we're talking about not killing, we're not talking
slaughtering
about killing
them
cats.
out.
We're not talking about killing cats either. This seems like a fine thing, right?
We don't neuter the chickens either, so.
Yeah, see, now then the chicken jokes are gonna start and then the meeting's gonna get out of control, so we'll leave it.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Rowley?
My concern, and I read this as well, is on the enforcement side. And I'm still not clear, and maybe I need to look to the New York example to kind of understand how this works from an enforcement standpoint. This person's licensed to feed the cats and this person isn't. So I see somebody's feeding the cats. Are they okay? Are they not? Are they a registered person or not? Ms. Larrier brought up even if I am registered to feed the neutered cats and a non-neutered cat comes up to eat the food, they're not going to be turned away at the door. We don't card the cats. So
Carding the cats, I like that.
So I'm just not sure how that works, just logistically speaking.
Well,
I agree that something needs to be done, but I'm just not clear as to how this works.
I agree that we don't want to feed cats that aren't in the feral cat colony, and I think there's a solution to that is you put out the food for the cats in the colony, and then you bring it in. You don't leave it there all day, which some people do. Or they feed them in the middle of the night, and whoever eats it, including raccoons and other wild animals.
Yeah, just from an enforcement.
That's something that would have to be done under a controlled situation so as not to attract other cats. And as far as enforcing, the people who would be allowed to do it would be the people who would have the approval of the nonprofit and also of the township, and people who were not doing it under those auspices would be in violation of the township code.
Form an arrangement with the nonprofit, have them train people who want to be involved, and let the people who have gotten the training have a window card or something.
Right.
Oh, look, here's somebody feeding feral. Oh, look, the little sticker means they're part of the town program,
Right.
so
And I
know who to talk to.
And we would know who they are. So that, and also, they would need a veterinarian for emergency sick care. And so it's going to take a lot of organization, but I think if we work cooperatively to solve a problem, I think we can do it. One thing is, another caveat I have is I wouldn't want to see giant feral cat colonies. I think we'd have to limit the number of cats in the colony so as not to intrude on the neighbors.
Well, you meant number of cats, not size of the cats. You wouldn't want a colony of giant feral cats.
The numbers of cats, yes.
Mr. Manning?
I think that we're getting into
Yeah,
the
into the
weeds.
Yes. Can I suggest that perhaps, Mr. Rowe, for our next meeting, you will have met with some interested parties. One, Ms. Sachs, comes to mind, and possibly go over it. Also, first of all, I would like to see what you have from New York, and you can give that to all of the committee. Second, meet with the one or two interested parties, come up with some sort of a plan that we can start to discuss. I'd like to table the ordinance that Mr. Desiderio wrote, if that's okay. Mr. Manning?
I would like to make a suggestion that if anyone in the audience who may be here who is interested in becoming involved, give their contact information to Mr. Rowe.
That would be a great.
We weren't going to introduce this ordinance tonight, but I mean, it certainly, the shape of it looks right. There's just a little detail about who we partner with. But the rest of it seems to make sense to me.
Right. It would give them a good jumping off point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr.
Yeah, I would, before I say where I am, I'd like to hear from folks. So can we?
Well, I haven't gotten to the public comment.
Right, well, I was going to ask if we could move that up so that we could get some comments before we conclude where we're going.
that would be a good suggestion. So then why don't we move up public comment? Mr. Rowe, I'll excuse you for the moment. We'll move up public comment, and this is the time when anyone who wants to address the Board of Health should come forward. Please give us your name and your address.
My name is Laura Himmeline, and I reside at 77 Broadview Avenue in Maplewood. The good news is that there's actually already several people in this town that are actively meeting and organizing. We've already reached out to the Coalition for Animals, which is a 501c that also has subsidiaries. If it's okay, we're all seated here. One of the interested members is also a veterinarian that is willing to do the spay and neutering for us, as well as the vaccination. So we are already organizing, which I think is great. And Rob, thank you. We're very interested in working with you and with Mr. Rowe on seeing this come to fruition. I think it is very important that a trap, neuter, vaccinate, and return program is a part of this initiative. I don't think it has to be as complicated either. I think that there are people that are feeding the cats. I think we come and we help them take care of this problem. I've been living in my neighborhood for the last 10 years, and like many, there is a feral cat problem. Over the years, I see it continuing to grow. This program, trap, neuter, vaccinate, and return, will actually minimize and eventually eliminate the problem. That is our ultimate goal, not just to keep and maintain the feral cat situation, but to actually, like I said, with organizing, and it takes a lot of organizing, to see that they're eliminated so that there aren't any hungry cats coming to people's doorsteps, preying on their own emotions because it's freezing outside and you want to feed them. And the vaccination program would also be a part of this, very much involved in making sure that they also have their shots as well. So that said, we are already organizing. There are several members, and we're hoping to get that 501c status through the Coalition for Animals. So we will be delighted to work with the town on making sure that we can see this happen sooner than later.
Well, thank you. Ms. Leventhal, I think you had a question?
She answered it. Thank you.
I have a
Mayor DeLuca.
Yeah, what's your position on having people who do this register?
Well, I feel like I think there needs to first be an ordinance that will allow just anybody in town to actually go and feed the cat and trap it if they need to, because you need to feed in order to trap them. So I personally feel that we need to have it be just less complicated. If you're feeding them, I think that you should, and someone complains about it, then they come out, and if they don't reach out to our group within the 30 days, then maybe they're fined. But then we can actually be already informed of where they exist, and we can do our part to make sure that we can take care of it.
So you're laying out stages that we just lift the ban on feeding.
Right, no, but I think it has to be done with the notion that there's an active group that's willing to take care of it.
And so,
there has to be a group and organized that they can go to.
So we find out that somebody's feeding cats, and we inform you, and you go sort of do an intervention and say, hey, about this, how can we work with you, blah, blah, blah. And then if nothing changes, if the person doesn't do it, it doesn't live up to...
Well, no, we would see to that. I think
so you would do
we
that.
See to it that it's done. But like I said, we're in the beginning stages, so we're certainly willing to work with you. If it turns out that you want us to be the ones or the group that has, just the license, then, let's start somewhere. I think that's the most important.
So let me tell you my story.
Okay.
So I have a bunch of cats who live in my backyard
because
my neighbor could care less about any kind of responsibility and just feeds the stuff and leaves the stuff there all the time. Who knows what else is eating back there? But the cats are in my yard all day long. That's where they hang out, and then they go over there to eat. So how do I get my neighbor back there to be more responsible and somehow
right. Well,
live up to these?
They need to contact us, and I hear your problem. I hear it. I'm right with you. I'm a part of that. I see it myself. I've struggled with it, and it's really hard. What happens is we do it. We take over because we're the ones that are going to have the resources and the money. Half the time, it's easy. Going and buying food is really easy. And unfortunately, there are people that that's about all they want to do or can do. However, if I go and say, hi, you're feeding the cats, we're here to help trap them and neuter them, and they won't actually procreate and make more. We're doing that for you.
Okay.
I think that the problem then is taken care of. Yes, they'll still feed them, but they're not going to be, those 6 cats you have in your backyard won't be 12 in spring. They'll just be the 6. And then they'll live out their lives and there won't be any more. Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
So you heard me make a comment that I thought it would be easier for us to make an arrangement with one group and have that group handle it. So do you think that makes your idea of participating in this easier or harder?
I think it makes it easier. I think that we can then organize and then reach out to the community and get awareness and do the fundraising, and hopefully it'll be an organization that will grow and have a tremendous amount of volunteers.
And one more. What duration do you think a pilot would make sense?
That's, I mean, in terms of acting, like starting it, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, suppose we started
I
it.
would love to start, tomorrow.
Well, no, but suppose we started it in the spring.
Yeah,
And
I
how
think
long
that
is
it'd be
it?
very important.
Is it
to
a
do
year? Is
spring.
it 2 years that we have to?
I think that obviously, if we're working with the town, I think that we should designate areas that, well, obviously, if people are calling with a complaint, like Ghostbusters or something, that we can be there to help them. However, I do think that we need to sit down and actually go this by zone, find out where the cats are. I think if we do a little bit here and there, I think we run the risk of not being successful. And this way, if we start with zones, we can then report back to you and say, well, in this area, we've now successfully trapped 20 cats and vaccinated and neutered them. Now we're going on to this zone. And I think that that's going to be the easiest way that we can kind of show our progress.
Could I suggest that we let Mr. Rowe and your group meet
Certainly.
and come back with a presentation that might answer some of these questions once you've been able to have extended conversation about it? How does that sound to everyone on the board?
Well, I want to see if there's anybody who's got a difference of opinion on this first. But I think, again, I would suggest we hold off on giving any indication of where we're moving until we hear from people.
Anyone else want to address the board? Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up something. I'm Selena Sachs, 24 Overlook Terrace in Maplewood. This feral cat problem, the one that doesn't have the clipped ear.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The feral cat. You know this feral cat that comes and he's not clipped? He has to be fixed. You feed him. You don't send him away because you're going to trap him. That's the way you're going to trap him. So I just wanted to clear that up because I thought it was pretty funny.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the board? Yes.
I don't know anything about
I'm
cats.
sorry, can I get your name and
My name
address?
is Debbie Jacoby. I live at 57 Park Avenue. I don't know much about cats. I don't have any dogs. I'm just a person who has been plagued for the last 20 years on and off by the feral cat community. I'm encouraged by the fact that there is a group that would like to do something about this. I'm sorry I missed last month's meeting. I will say that in the last 2 weeks, I have had to open my windows and turn my attic fan on at 14-degree days because feral male cats are under the deck, find ways in and around my house to spray and make the house unlivable for about 3 hours it takes to air out the basement or air out my first floor. It's freezing cold. I can't keep opening the windows, and while I'm encouraged by the fact that these cats can be caught, I will tell you that my neighbor across the street, before she moved about 3 years ago, fed about 20 cats. She caught most of them and fixed most of them. But the 2 tomcats that she couldn't catch are the two guys, I think, who are fighting it out for space under my deck, pee all over my front porch, have ruined bushes, have wrecked the lattice work under my deck trying to get in and out of a place. So while feeding is a good thing, I'm not quite sure what you're going to do in a winter's day when they're looking for shelter. Diminishing the number of cats is important, but also if you're going to feed them, we need to prevent houses from being the shelter. So I feel for you, but I got to tell you, it's been a miserable, since the weather went cold, it has been a miserable time in my house. And I really encourage the town to do everything and anything they can to get this group under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the board?
Hi. My name is Jessica Gotthold, and I'm with the National Foundation for Animal Rescue, P.O. Box 565, Saddle River, New Jersey. I'm the president and founder of the National Foundation for Animal Rescue. I started my organization 10 years ago, and our primary mission is to reduce the animal population explosion by humane and ethical means. And one of our primary missions is trap, neuter, return. We have extensive experience in this, and I would offer any assistance to anyone here that's participating in this community effort. And I just want to bring up several points. Number one, we all have a neighbor that is irresponsible. Sometimes, someplace, somewhere, we all have had one. And unfortunately, they make it more difficult for everyone else. And it's unfortunate because sometimes the citizenry is condemned for the acts of one or two. These problems, become very frustrating. And I say that you always want to engage that person who's being irresponsible, because most people don't even know their neighbors that well. And by kind of getting them into the fold and making them understand that this is a positive thing for everyone, and engaging them one-on-one, it often works out very well. Feral cats, especially male feral cats, mark territory. The odor, extremely unpleasant, and can be very frustrating. Within approximately 2 weeks after neutering, that odor disappears because it's all testosterone and so forth, and it will dissipate and be eliminated. The other thing is providing adequate shelter and feeding stations will also have the cats gather in certain locations, and they identify the feeders with feeding, with caring for them, monitoring the colonies for injury, disease, anything. So it really becomes a very strategic, organized, and smooth effort. It takes a little time to get going, but it really does become incredibly positive for all involved. Also, ear tipping, where and it's normally the left ear is tipped so that that's a universal symbol that that cat has been taken care of. So it's easily identifiable. We always document every cat with taking pictures and documenting if they have any special needs or special markings or anything like that. So again, not only are the people who are doing the work are identified, but the cats are also identified, so that if a newcomer does appear, that cat is identified as a newcomer, an unneutered male or unspayed female, and that situation can be addressed right away. So I want to tell you that this is incredibly enlightening. If people were as receptive as you are all throughout the state, we would be a TNR state. And that's actually one of my missions also, is for New Jersey to become a TNR state. So I applaud the town of Maplewood for listening, for engaging. I just want to say thank you.
I have a question. Once you said you've been doing this for 10 years in Saddle River?
Yeah, we have a P.O. box of Saddle River. We operate in that in the Bergen County area, but we also help animals all over.
And what is your perception of what has happened to the feral cat population in that municipality?
I'll tell you, we started out 10 years ago with, we manage 10 colonies right now. We had about 12 or 14 colonies back then, and we had over 100 cats. Way over 100 cats, probably, combined at all the locations. Now we're down to about 30, all told, because they've, a lot of them have passed away. When we see a cat that's not doing well, we trap it, we get it veterinary attention, we make a decision whether, we don't want to have it suffer, obviously. But the other part of it is, this is so incredible, but I can count on one hand how many unneutered males and unspayed females we've had at our colonies in the past 4 years, on one hand. And it is awesome. Because what happens with the feral colony also is that they ward off other cats. They form, it's a group, it's a social hierarchy. And typically these colonies, once they become stable, really ward off other kitties. But not to say that somebody irresponsible is not going to dump off a cat there saying, cats are being taken care of. That's inevitable. You can't control every person's actions or everything, but that's why you have the community effort, people monitoring on a daily basis what's going on at the colonies and, doing everything possible for the right reasons and not exterminating them. They're victims of human irresponsibility. That's the bottom line. That's what they are. You have somebody who never fixed their cats, and I don't know if you know the statistic, but 2 cats and their successive offspring, if no one ever fixes any of these cats over 10 years, how many cats do you think that makes? What do you think?
About 50.
Over 80 million.
How many?
80 million, over 80 million. Because cats give birth at the age of 6 months old, and if they have a litter of 6, and let's say 3 are female, you're talking exponential growth. And the gestation period is approximately 65 days. So, this is a really serious problem. Feral cats are like the wildlife of the 21st century. But we are here to protect creatures and protect each other, not to exterminate because we just feel like it's an inconvenience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to? Thank you. Does anyone else want to address the board? Excuse me.
Joanne Shaver, 147 Franklin Avenue.
Can I get you to speak that again closer to the microphone?
Oh, sorry. Joanne Shaver, 147 Franklin Avenue, Maplewood. I have a friend who lives in Califon. Out there, they have lots of cats because they have barns, they have horses, they have grain, so they have cats. It was getting very, very bad, not only outside, but all in the town. They got a thing out in their county where everybody knows who has the cats, where they are, who's got them, and twice a year, it's like, do you have cats? And they actually have a van, and it comes, and they take the cats, they get them fixed, they bring them back. And they have had much less problems in the last 5 years that they've been doing it. It's worked a lot, it's worked very well for them, because they still have the cats to get rid of the mice and all that, but they don't have the, she said, the hundreds of too many cats. And I think if you remove the sort of Damocles from this town, and it's safer to be gay than to have cats in this town, you'd probably get it done faster, and you'd probably have a lot more people behind it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Lombardo, 55 Orchard Place. I'm actually in Wayne. I've been, have a 501c3 for 10 years as well. I'm very involved with one of the founding members of the Passaic County Spay Neuter Coalition. We've been doing TNR with the Passaic, the mobile coalition, mobile spay neuter commuter for 10 years, and have been working with Jessica and her group as well. The one thing I wanted to point out is, I mean, there's a difference between feral cats and stray cats. The stray cat population is also getting much larger and much more of a problem because of people losing their homes and they're leaving their cats behind. So if there's some stray cats that are friendly, feral cats cannot be touched, cannot be handled, cannot come in your house. If there's stray cats that are friendly, then something should be done. I don't know how Maplewood does it as far as getting them into shelters and finding them homes. They can be taken off the streets. The other thing that I think is important to note is to get the public, the community involved in a way that I have found so many times that people don't want to help and don't want your help because they think you're going to come and take your cats away and kill them. So it has to be explained to them that you're there to help and you're there to bring them back. Because otherwise they're going to do everything possible to hide the cats and stop you from trapping them and stop this from happening and stop this program from working. They have to be convinced that this is a good program and that you're here to help them and not take the cats away and kill them. So they have to be involved that way.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to address the Board of Health? Being no one, I will close our public comment section. Is there any more comment on trap, neuter, and release from the Township Committee? I'm sorry, the Board of Health?
Yeah, I think we ought to move along the lines that you suggested of instructing Mr. Rowe to meet with the concerned citizens and come back to us with a proposal for a pilot project. And, you know, I think you heard some of our concerns, we've heard some of your concerns, and those can be addressed when they come back.
Agreed.
So I would move that as a motion to instruct Mr. Rowe to work with the committee and come back to us with a proposal.
So, just so we're clear, I agree, and I'll second that motion. I just want to make sure I understand what we're looking for him to come back with. Are we looking for him to work with Mr. Desiderio and give us an ordinance to consider introducing, or are we asking him to give comments on the existing ordinance, or?
I think whatever he needs to do, but I think that's going to be what he comes back to us is going to have to be a program and the means to do it, the law.
I mean,
So
I would suggest that we, if we want to get something ready to go in the spring, the next time we talk about this, it ought to be in the form of an ordinance, or as close to, Mr. Desiderio did a great job on a draft for us to discuss. Let's try and have the delivery after all these meetings be a beefed up draft for discussion. So if you'll accept that suggestion, I'll second it.
Yeah, the only thing is I think this just is an enabling ordinance.
Yeah.
We also want to hear the guts of how it's going to work. The time period, who's going to go out there, that kind of stuff.
I agree.
Ms. Fritzen, please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes. Thank you. And anyone who does want to be involved, please give your names, as Mr. Manning suggested, to Mr. Rowe. Mr. Rowe, your report.
Take a break after this. I would take a break after this meeting so
This
people
has
can.
been the most exciting Board of Health meeting.
Just, we had a very busy month. Our part-time inspector did almost 30 food inspections. Our nurses are inspecting schools for immunization audits, and that's been very, very busy doing that. The Humane Society will be back later this month, and the health officers were meeting to talk about medical needs shelters, and we're going to continue those discussions. We're having a meeting with some hospitals this month. So January was a very busy month. So I don't have any special.
Any questions on Mr. Rowe's report?
No.
Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back to the regular agenda, item number 9, presentation 2014 Maple Woodstock. Drew Dix.
Thank you, everybody. Drew Dix, 663 Prospect Street in Maplewood. And I'm here tonight as this year's chair of the Maple Woodstock Music and Arts Festival, which is held every year in Memorial Park. And I'm here to request, again, each year, request the Township Committee approval to apply for a temporary liquor license from the New Jersey Division of Alcohol and Beverage Control for the sale of beer at the Maple Woodstock Music and Arts Festival, which will be July 12 and 13, 2014 this year in Memorial Park. I supplied a map just to reorient everyone with the location of where it will be. The actual fenced-in beer garden area will be the same as it was the previous 2 years when it started at the top of the park, directly across from the train station. Again, this is the 3rd consecutive year of operation that we would have this as part of the festival. We've worked very closely with the town and the chief of police on this in 2012 and 2013. It's become a significant, fixture, part of the festival, a significant revenue stream, and again, with the help of the town and the chief, it's been contained and managed very well without incident. So again, just want to request approval to apply for the license.
You're also selling wine too, right?
No wine this year, beer only.
And you were beer only last year, too,
We were
right?
beer only last year.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Dix?
Mr. Dix, the first year we did this, we had a certain level of security that the police requested, and based on how everything went in the first year, you requested a reduction to a slightly lower level, and the police were fine with that.
The chief of police, he's not here tonight, right? No. Okay, with the chief's approval, we cut it from 6 to 4 officers in that area. And
So-
that was,
No, so I'm sorry. So I know what happened between year 1 and year 2. What I'm asking you is, are you suggesting a cut from year 2 to year 3, or are you going to be at the same level security-wise for the 3rd year?
same level for the 3rd year.
Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Mr. Manning, you had a post Maple Woodstock meeting with department heads and Mr. Dix. You have anything you want to say about this request?
No, I think that they have done a great job in terms of addressing our issues and contributing towards things, et cetera. So,
You have anything else?
No?
Okay, is there a motion to approve the sale of beer at the 2014 Maple Woodstock?
Yes, I move it.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Mr. Brownlee?
Yeah, actually, I had a question, but I'm not sure if I'm out of sequence.
You can ask Mr. Dix.
Okay. As I recall, when in year 1, the original purpose for doing this was to raise enough money to get bigger acts. Last year, when we got the results of year 1, as I recall, actually, from a monetary standpoint, that was not the case. It was actually a money-losing proposition, just in terms of the beer concession. But we made a reduction in the amount of security with the police department's approval. I don't know if we got a similar financial summary of year 2. Can you give a little statement on that, first of all?
Sure, absolutely. And I actually have copies. I can distribute it. Is that all right? Just pass it around? Sure. Unorthodox? But the short story is, yeah, year 1 was very much trial and error. We ended up, losing $288 through, again, working with the police chief and having the event not be 105 degrees for 2 days. We sold a lot more product. So there were a combination of factors in year 2. we actually turned a profit of $1,825. That's a very significant part of our budget, and that does help, and I'm more than happy to Marlon, you can start the chain here if you want. And that gives you just a quick thumbnail breakdown of our expenses there and the profit and revenue. P&L, as we say.
Any other discussion?
Well, I'm just looking at this now.
So, this little breakdown here, it says beer and sangria sales. It's beer and sangria in 2012 and beer only in 2013, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions?
Again, I'm just kind of looking through this, but okay. So, again, the purpose in year one was to make money. It was a trial and error. Sorry, it was a trial and error. We lost money, but nevertheless, we did it for year two. We made $1,800 net profit. I'm assuming that's net.
Correct.
And so the purpose, which I was actually going to ask, I see here, the purpose for doing this is it creates revenue, $1,800. It offers a gathering place for residents. I mean, Maple Woodstock is a gathering place for residents, so I'm not quite sure I understand that secondary aspect.
Gathering place to drink beer for residents.
I'm not, well...
Yeah, I mean, that's the only distinction I can make there.
Okay. I think my statement on that, my position on that is pretty well known, if you will. I don't necessarily see that as a net positive, but so stated. Okay, thank you.
I respect that, by the way.
What's the total cost for Maple Woodstock Ballpark?
Last year, it was about $60,000. 60,000. So a couple $1,000s is significant because we don't come away with, it's a zero-sum game. It's all volunteer, there's no carryover.
Okay. Any other comments? We have a motion to allow beer to be sold at the 2014 Maple Woodstock in Memorial Park. Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
No.
Mrs. Larrier?
No.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Passes 3-2.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you all very much for your consideration.
Okay. We have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, we're at item number 10, ordinance on final passage, ordinance 2740-14, an ordinance to designate the building at 60 Woodland Road as a local historic landmark. This ordinance will designate the building at 60 Woodland Road as a local historic landmark.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance, which is 60 Woodland, which is the former Women's Club, making it a local historic landmark? Anyone want to speak in favor of or opposed to this ordinance? Both of you? Yes, come on up.
For team effort.
Just say who you are.
Virginia Koshan, Chair of the Maplewood Historic Preservation Commission.
Patty Chrisman, Vice Chair of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Well, we just came tonight in case you had any further questions and to say how pleased we are that you're taking this up and you're going to vote on it, and we hope that the outcome will be positive.
Any questions? I don't think so. Are you in favor of this? Do you want to go on record saying you're in favor of this ordinance?
Definitely.
I think they already did.
Well, since you're here, you get.
I think we did by
This way you can get to read
resolution.
it. This way your name will come up in the minutes on the internet. So. Okay. We need a motion. Or we did get a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I move this ordinance be adopted. I gladly move this ordinance be adopted as a whole, and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone else want to speak on this? Close the public hearing. So moved and seconded. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
This is great.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Can we have another ordinance on final?
Ordinance number 2741-14 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will prohibit the parking of commercial vehicles, liveries, and omnibus on Elmwood Avenue between the Irvington Town Line and Brookwood Drive.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance, which would ban buses and commercial vehicles on Elmwood Avenue? I know Pierre was here earlier, but I guess he had to go back out. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and Mrs. Larry, can we get a motion?
Yes, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
I'd like to ask that we, through our code office or the police department, or both, take a look at what's going on as this is put in place. Let us know how, what the results are of passing this ordinance, and then check again in a couple of months and get back to us at that point too. My concerns are the
Behavior migrates.
that's a very good way to say it. The behavior can migrate. So I'd like to know if that indeed happens or doesn't happen.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. We have a final ordinance on final.
Yes, Mayor. Item 12, ordinance number 2742-14. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will restrict parking on Clinton Avenue at certain times and on certain days.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? You watched this, so you know you need to say your name and your address. Okay.
Hi, I'm Carrie Artsy, 14 Clinton Avenue in Maplewood. This has been an sore issue for us for the last, I've been there for 14 years, so it's probably then, 14 years. There's around 15 kids at the bus stop that wait there every morning. There's another probably 15 to 20 more kids that walk back and forth to, Jefferson and Maplewood Middle and even from the high school. And the people on Clinton Avenue are very considerate of the people who, or they're aware of the people that are coming through, so they're a little bit more cautious. But people that don't live there and just zoom down the street and are plagued with nowhere to go when you're turning in the street or you're on the street. I had to back up 3 or 4 houses because this one person wouldn't move to the side for me. So it's kind of like a nuisance, and especially with the snow and everything, it just adds more problems to the area. But you can't make a right on the street because there's cars parked on both sides. You can't get through. There's just nowhere to go. So it's been a huge problem for us. And like I said, I've been there for 14 years. That's how long the problem's been there. But the kids there, someone's going to get hit by a car because no one really watches where they're going, and it's a huge concern.
So you're in favor of the passage of the ordinance?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions?
Just a question. Certain times of day, this seems to be more of an issue. You mentioned a couple of different.
The cars are parked there the whole entire day, so it happens all day. When the kids are around, of course, during the school hours, it's, there's more of an,
right.
high alert, but the cars are there all day long.
Right, but you're in favor? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Okay. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this?
I'm
Jason McClinsky. Nice to meet you. I think the best example of why this needs to be done is about 3 months ago, a woman backed up into my driveway. I live at 607 Ridgewood, which is at the bottom of Clinton Avenue. And my 2 sons were playing basketball in the driveway, and she thought it okay to pull up my driveway to do a K-turn to get off the street. So to your question, it's not any specific time of the day, it's all day. We're like the Statue of Liberty of parking on Clinton Avenue. I've gone so far as to put $3 under everyone's like wiper blades once to see if they get the trick, the joke to park in town. So I think there's like never a better time to do this. The bus stop, I think what Carrie said is perfect. I mean, there's at least 15 kids every morning running around, and you can't always predict what kid's gonna run off the sidewalk or not, but what you can do is eliminate the problem of these people parking. I mean, it's like, I can tell you when these people get new cars, because it's the same group of people for the last 5 or 6 years, so it's much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? You just have to say your name again for the record. So that
Carrie Artsy. And not to mention the fact that they park and you can't even get out of your driveway. I mean, we're wedged in, so that's a huge issue too. We're just blocked.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and Mr. Ryan, can we get a motion?
Chairman, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to the law.
Second.
Any discussion?
None needed.
Call the
Mr.
roll.
Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Could you explain, after voting on this tonight, the process going forward, and at what point will we see signs up there and enforcement?
Well, it has to be published, which will be a week from Thursday.
A week from Thursday.
And it becomes effective upon publication. So tomorrow at our staff meeting, I'll indicate that, we have to get the signs. I don't know how long that will take, but we may have some already. Can put them up.
Okay.
But shortly thereafter.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we're going to go into the discussion items. Ms. Dougherty is here. If you don't mind, just 1 second, because I see some of the folks from Brook Lane are still here, so I'd like to honor their attendance and hanging out and deal with that, and then we'll come back to the school resolution.
And the Board of Ed is involved.
And the Board of Ed is involved in Brook Lane because they passed that the easement. So, a while back, we had a proposal from former Mayor Fred Perfetta, who came to us and said he'd like to work with us in a public-private partnership in improving Brook Lane, the area around the brook that is behind Jefferson School, and the path that runs from Woodland to the bridge that crosses the brook. And we know from our own observation and Mr. Burbank's comments to us that that area is in need of re-asphalting. There's potholes, and there's just a need now to do some work there. So once we go in there and start doing that improvement to the path, it then kicks off some additional responsibilities on our end to make sure that if we're going to upgrade the path or to improve the path, there has to be sufficient lighting in order for people to utilize that path in a safe manner. So we've raised these questions, and we had a community meeting back in the beginning of January 6th, and we've had a team working on this. It's been Mr. Malavasi, our engineer, Mr. Burbank, our DPW director, Mr. Manning, myself, Mr. Perfetta, Mr. Nile from the Garden Club, and Aileen Binder, I guess, is a resident who's also been working with us on that team. So we put together some general concepts as to what we were going to propose and came up with a budget, and we presented it to the folks at the meeting. There were significant comments. We had a combination, for example, of putting up some new lights and keeping the old overhead lights, and there was a comment that making it uniform of the new lights and eliminating the overhead lights would be a preference. You heard some comments tonight about the plantings of the trees and the removal of trees. So This is still an ongoing process with the neighborhood. We've been sending out updates. You've been getting those updates. So you're pretty aware of the conversations that we've been having. But all in all, it's been favorable, and we do want to move forward. Now, we have to come to the Township Committee because there is an allocation that we need from the Open Space Trust Fund. Again, we will take up some of the concerns we heard here tonight, some of the concerns that remain. We're going to be putting up stakes to show people where the lights are going to be, and we're going to do other things to demonstrate what the changes are going to be. And there's generally support out there for moving forward. But again, moving forward requires us to allocate at least $30,000 from the Open Space Trust Fund. This is a 50-50 proposition between the township and Mr. Perfetta, and we've identified an up to amount of $60,000 and want to present this to the Township Committee with a $30,000 commitment from the Open Space Trust Fund. So that's where we are. Mr. Manning, I assume that we have that money there that we can allocate for.
Yes, we have unallocated money that we can now allocate.
Right. So that's, and we will be talking about the Open Space Trust Fund in the context of our budget discussion. Right. So that's where we are, and I'd like to get a sense from the Township Committee if there's still commitment to move forward with this. I hope there is, and that we can give a signal to Mr. Manning that we do want to move forward on this, and he can start doing the work that he needs to do to start writing the specs and getting the bids that we will need on some of the work. Yes, Ms. Leventhal.
I'd like to make a motion that we do move ahead with the town contributing from the unallocated funds in the Open Space Trust Fund, and there are about, in September, the end of September, it was about $40,000, so we know we're okay. In cooperation with Mr. Perfetta, who brought this idea forward for Maplewood at large. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
As long as the concerns that folks had about light shining in their homes or formerly lovely wooded views being replaced by wide open, as long as those concerns have been addressed, and it sounds like they have been, this seems like a fine idea to me.
Let's call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, and if you don't mind, I'm going to give point of privilege to our former mayor if you'd like to come up and say some words now as opposed to later.
Thank you, Mayor DeLuca. Appreciate that. I'd like to, inasmuch as I assume that this is really the official act of this body with respect to this project, it'll be funded half by myself and half by the Open Space Trust Fund, and we will, of course, tweak it as we go along in response to public comments and sentiment. But if I'm right in that, and this essentially is the go-ahead, except for the detail.
It is.
It is. I just want to thank you very much for affirming this vision of mine and this plan, which, as I said some time ago, was something I had been thinking about for quite some time. It means a lot to me personally, and I want to reiterate some of the things I said at the beginning, because actually the scope of this is a bit broader than simply the portion which is part of the town's right-of-way and the portion which the Board of Education has now provided the town with an easement over. There is the brook itself, and there is the other side of the brook, which remains district property. I think they should be thought of as a whole. I'm sure when David Nile gets through with planting this, it's going to be glorious, And what we're going to have to contend with is that one side of the brook will look glorious, but unfortunately, the district side won't unless we do something about that also, which will take cooperation between people, I think, interested in this and Jefferson School. There's a lot of poison ivy on that side, for example, dead trees, that they should be consistent. David has, I know, in mind planting a glorious tree on that side of the brook next to Jefferson. And as I mentioned, I think also when I was a kid going to Jefferson, there actually were fish and crayfish in that brook. And I would like to see, if it's possible, now that the brook is a lot cleaner, if we can, in cooperation with Jefferson School, try to reintroduce some native species into the waterway. So that would be something that would be nice. Now, because this is it's part of the neighborhood, and it involves the district too, I'm envisioning that it would be appropriate perhaps if the neighborhood, if we could facilitate, I would certainly be willing to lend my hand, to facilitate a local organization, a neighborhood group, if you will, that would have in mind, let's call it Friends of the Brook Path, that would have in mind keeping an eye on this, seeing how it progresses, doing things like taking care of litter, maybe making suggestions here or there, pointing out to the Department of Public Works if something is dying or needs attention, etc. And also assuring that the town and the realtors, for example, use this as something that will be an attraction. It's not too far from the village for people to walk through and can be used to advertise the town as just another asset, as something we have. So I'd like, if we're going through with it, I'd like then to turn attention to some of these loose ends with the district, and hopefully to work with the neighborhood to set up a group, a permanent group, that would be in an oversight position with respect to this, so we can carry forward the concerns that you've expressed. And I thank you again very much.
Thank you. Okay. Beth Dougherty, would you please come on up? Our president of the school board, you sent us an email today with a resolution and have a request for us?
Yes, the school board at our meeting last Monday night, we passed a resolution that effectively is requesting this state to do a thorough review of the way that state aid is currently being distributed under what's SAFRA, which is the School Funding Reform Act. That act, the formula is not fully funded, nor has it been for a long time, so there's partial aid distribution. And we believe that the way that that partial aid is distributed is really not true to the formula, that it's not done as equitably as it could be. So our resolution is really calling for the thorough review of the way the aid is distributed and a more equitable distribution of partial funding, assuming that the funding formula is not fully funded, because that would take much more money in the school, the state school budget. So the resolution that we adopted, I basically modified it so that it was coming from the township's perspective. Bunch of whereas clauses that really just speaks to the purpose of the SAFRA formula, which is a student need-based. You don't want me to read through this whole resolution, do you?
No.
But then it also stresses kind of the fiscal distress that we're in. We, as you know, have the statutory cap of a 2% tax levy increase with adjustments that are made for growing enrollment and excessive increases in healthcare premium. We have only used a small portion of those adjustments last year. For the first time, we have about $2 million of banked cap, but that's $2 million of taxing authority, not to be confused with $2 million in the bank. Each million translates to about a percentage point. Even with raising taxes 2%, assuming our state aid stays flat, which has been flat for the last several years, which is actually a decreasing percentage of our operating budget, even with increasing our operating budget by 2%, we're looking at a $2.8 million deficit. That's a deficit that's larger than the tax increase. 2% is a little bit over $2 million, yet we have a $2.8 million, maybe even as high as $3 million tax deficit. So we're really just urging you to, and we're asking South Orange to do the same thing, to pass this resolution and forward it to the legislators. We are sending out similar emails with our board resolution to other school districts that are also disadvantaged by the way the funding is currently proportioned. We're not arguing about the formula itself. There's different camps there as far as whether the formula itself is a good thing or not. You know, aspects of it might be good, other aspects might be problematic. We're just talking about if they're going to follow the formula to do it to do it fairly, you know, because there are a lot of districts that on paper look like they're better off than we are, but get far more. And it's not just about getting more aid, because the formula could be set up that they get more aid. It's that when you look at the percentage of funding that they're getting, based on the formula, they're getting a higher percentage, right? We're getting 50% of what's called capped aid. The formula has a cap in it called a stabilization cap, because they wouldn't want to destabilize us by giving us too much state aid, which is interesting. But we only get 57% of that capped aid, whereas other districts that seem similar to us might get as much as, 80% or 90% of that aid. So that's really what this resolution is about.
See if there's any questions. Ms. Leventhal.
Just a question. I totally understand, and I thank you for taking, for doing your job, taking this initiative. Is this, are you, when you look at the percents by districts, is this within our DFG or is it throughout the state?
It's spread throughout the state. Mr. Bennett has done also, as another board member, has done a lot of comparisons also. And it really looks like the suburban districts, not just I, but GH and, was it EF? There's a lot of disadvantage there. But originally our resolutions had equitable funding, and we changed it to more equitable, because we're not actually asking for every district to get the exact same percentage, because that would very severely disadvantage some districts. I mean, the urban districts typically get a higher percentage of that partial funding, but maybe they need more, right? So this is our point here, is that for them to really look at districts that are similar in their need. The formula is student need based, right? There's a weighted student average, free and reduced lunch, English language learners, is to make sure that the percentage distribution is equal among more equal districts, as opposed to pure equal distribution across the state.
Mr. Brownlee, would you like to move the resolution?
Yes, I would. Mayor, I move that we adopt the resolution that our board president, Ms. Doherty, has provided to us and provided us for us, that we've discussed this evening.
Second.
Did I phrase that right?
Third.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor
Yes.
DeLuca?
Yes. So if you have that revised, if you give it to Mr. Desiderio, he'll...
Sure, you just want to print out? I sent it electronically, but would
Yeah,
you
we
like the printout? I did not send it to you, I sent it to the Township Committee.
I have it right here, I'll just forward it to you.
Okay.
Okay,
I've got
all
it.
right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks, Mr.
Thanks for coming out. Okay, we're back on the agenda, item number 2, under discussion, which is the redevelopment updates. Just quickly, I'm going to flip these. The PSE&G site, we have our attorneys working with their attorneys in talking about the redevelopment agreement. The developers have met with the design review team from the Springfield Avenue Partnership. They were to meet last night. I guess it might have got canceled with the snow. But they're going back and forth, and they then will bring a proposal, or the proposal, to the partnership board, which has to give its thumbs up to move forward. And it is expected that that plan will be before the planning board in March. So that's moving forward. On the post office, we had a very busy week. Last week, a week ago, Monday, the development team met with the Village Alliance Design Review Committee for a couple hours here, went over design issues, site issues. was a very good back and forth. They are having another meeting in about a month. Additionally, last Wednesday, the development team met with about 30 merchants and property owners in Maplewood Village for a breakfast meeting, and again, questions were asked and answered. And then on Thursday, we had a briefing for members of the leadership team of the Chamber of Commerce, and then we had our public meeting out here when there was probably about, let's say, 50 people here. And also we aired it on TV and got 9 questions from the phone from viewers on TV. So we have aired, we have shown the proposal, talked about the proposal. We now are waiting for the development team to go back and process all the comments that they've made, come back with some revisions, some rethinking, and then we'll start the process again in their meeting with the Village Alliance Design Review Committee and also with the Township Committee's Economic Development Committee. And they're also working with our lawyers on a redevelopment agreement. So that's, just wanted to give you that update and see if anybody had any questions. If not, we'll move forward. Okay. Item number 3 is Mr. Manning's item.
Yes, the New Jersey State League of Municipalities asked you to support an extension of the 2% cap on interest arbitration awards. And for those who are not too familiar with it, basically what it said, or the law changed about 3-4 years ago, which said that if you go to arbitration for salaries with police and fire, the arbitrator can award no more than 2% all in, everything in, because there are steps, there are different longevity, all of these things. 2% of all of that is the maximum that can be awarded. And this is expiring, or due to expire soon, and the league has asked, and I think it's very prudent, to support a continuation of it while we are still under a 2% cap in terms of our levy and a 4% cap in terms of our expenditures. It does not mean that you cannot settle for a different figure. What it means is if you go to arbitration, if you're brought to arbitration, that they cannot impose anything more than that. So I think it protects our position.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, that resolution's on our consent agenda, so we'll be dealt with it right there.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, that's right, it is.
All right,
Thank you.
good. And then your next item is the recreation fees and also the
Recreation salary ordinance. So the recreation fees had a couple of items. One, it incorporates 60W, the former women's club, so that we can start to have events there and have a basis for what we're charging on an hourly basis, etc. It also has the pool fees, which I think the only change in that had to do with active military and giving them a 50% discount.
Yes.
The salary resolution is basically something that we ordinance, you establish the salaries for all the summer positions so that we can start to hire people. And there was a little back and forth about the, we are going by the state constitutional minimum wage, not the federal one that was proposed, but the state one. And we're doing that because in order to compete with surrounding towns, to get the help that we need to be competitive.
And the state is $8.25.
25 cents an hour.
And
Yes.
this is not required of municipalities by
It
the
is
state,
not,
but we
by the
want to do
Constitution,
this.
right, yes.
Mrs. Larrier.
The fees that, the incentive fees that we give to volunteers in township, that doesn't need to be included in this ordinance?
No, because they have a...
That's a different ordinance.
Yeah, that's a different, it's established
LoSAP,
already.
right?
Yes.
LoSAP.
I don't know if that's what we call it, but we do have a ordinance that establishes a discounted rate for those who volunteer if they provide the appropriate paperwork.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions?
And I don't think that those are on, so the salary...
No, they're not. Neither of these are on.
Right, so
they'll
they'll
have to
be
come
on
up
for
at
the next meeting.
Yep.
So, but it sounds like the Township Committee is in favor of both of these, so.
Right.
Okay? Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Is there anyone who would like to speak during this second public comment period? Seeing no one, we will close the public comment period. No reports from departments. Administrative reports, Mr. Manning.
I have three things to report. Number one, and the big one is that we are out of road salt. So there is a little bit to take care of the hills, but that will run out depending upon the storm. We do have a storm advisory, a warning actually, that the Weather Service has issued, and it is saying that we are we may accumulate 3 to 6 inches between tonight, midnight, and 6 p.m. tomorrow, and along with that, 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice. So people need to be warned. They need to give themselves plenty of time tomorrow. Also, because of that, we're canceling the jitneys. So the morning jitneys will not be running. And those are the two big items. So we are notifying the people through a news flash on our website. And I think it goes along out to Facebook also. And we are also sending out an email blast. So jitneys will not be running tomorrow. We are extremely low on salt, almost run out of it, so we will be plowing, etc., but the roads will be icy, so please be careful. We have tried...
Hold on, we have a question?
But
Yes.
we're ordering more salt?
Oh, yes. I mean, we have ordered more salt. We have just...
Received it.
We are not the only town. There's
No.
about 10 towns in Essex County that
Yes.
have run out of salt, and there's no salt to be had at Port Newark.
So, we have that. And along with this, in order to keep current on what we're doing around town, please visit our website, www.maplewoodnj.org. Sign up for Code Red Alerts, for our news flashes. You can like us on Facebook, you can follow us on Twitter, and get on our email blast list so you can keep up to date with what's going on. And that's my report, unless there are questions.
I'm sorry, just one more question. I don't know how appropriate it is, but you've been in contact with the Board of Ed regarding that? The fact that there's no salt, it's going to be extremely icy, and what they're thinking about school tomorrow?
No, I have not. The Board of Ed typically contacts the police department when they're getting their input, and Public Works, and they are both very knowledgeable of that fact.
Okay. Mr. Desiderio, you want to tell us about the call you got from the post office?
Sure. On Friday, as you know, I have, over the course of the last several months, been negotiating with the post office extensions for the lease that expired in November. The original extension was for 2 months, and it brought it to January the 9th, and then most recently an additional 2 months through March the 9th. At the time of the last extension, I explained to the contact person who I have, who is physically located in New Haven, Connecticut, there would be no further extensions until we saw, that is, the town saw an actual lease that had been negotiated and executed. I told her that we weren't interested in the specific financial terms, but that we needed to see something that showed their good faith. She called me on Friday to say to me that in fact there wasn't any new agreement, and that the deal on Springfield Avenue had effectively fallen through, and that she had a report that she was looking at that had pretty much been signed. And under the terms of the report, the carriers would be going to Union, and this is on a permanent basis, is the way it was conveyed to me. The carriers would be going to Union, and all mail handling would be handled out of Union. The Dodge dealership was out. There were environmental issues. That there would be a new retail facility established within the township, and that there were several locations that were being discussed. I think she actually said there were 4 locations that were being discussed. I had a conversation with the mayor. I went back to her, told her that we needed to have a meeting with someone in the know at the Postal Service to talk about this, and specifically with regard to the location of the retail facility. She told me that she was going to be away yesterday. I reached out to her today. I did not get a return call. So that's what we know at this point, but it appears that the mail handling aspect of this is going to Union, if the report which she was reading from is in fact the correct report. So that's what I know as of right now.
One thing I would suggest is that we could let them know that, contrary to what we said earlier, we would be willing to extend it beyond May 9th in order to give us time, I'm sorry, March 9th, in order to give us time to have this meeting. I think we'll be in a better position having the post office here than having it not here.
Okay.
So if, we can remove that requirement of having a lease there and maybe consider at least 1 month, if not 2, so that we can, plan, because we know how they operate. They're just a very difficult group to deal with. So, okay, thank you. And nothing else. Ms. Fritzen.
Just a couple things, Mayor. Since the last meeting, I was asked to speak to the state ABC concerning the special concessionaire permit and our eligibility. And simply, we are eligible to have that kind of permit at a Township of Maplewood public building. And at any time that you like more information as to how that works, just let me know. My other item is the people in the back are waiting patiently for our liquor license transfer at the conclusion of this meeting, which is a person-to-person transfer of the Village Wine Shop to the Maplewood Wine Shop.
That's it. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Fritzen? All right. Mrs. Larrier, any report?
No report, sir.
Mr. Ryan?
Just one item, Mayor. As you reported in our last meeting, we've formed a post office redevelopment project construction mitigation committee, and I just wanted to inform you that I'm on that committee, and we had our kickoff meeting this morning. Ms. De Palma convened it. Good, solid representation by our department heads here, representations from the Alliance and the Alliance Board, merchants, citizens. Ms. De Palma basically gave an update of what we think the current project timeline is, and we brainstormed about the things that we were going to have to worry about, both in terms of, schedules around when the demolition happens, schedules around when the construction happens, and what a long-term view might be. So there was a lot of good discussion and airing of issues, issues around making sure that we continue to aggressively and proactively market the village, make sure that we take special effort to make sure folks aren't scared away from the village because there's some construction going on, when it's important that disruptions be minimized, and the best ways to get public information out. So there'll be more meetings about this. I just wanted you to be aware that there was a very good and very productive kickoff of this. Folks have some investigations that they're doing, and I think everybody's very enthusiastic about it moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. Leventhal.
Just to announce that the Holocaust Remembrance will be conducted on April 27th, starting at 3 p.m. at Sherry-Tefelo Temple in South Orange.
Mr. Brownlee.
I have 4 items.
Ooh.
Maybe a record. Maybe a record, I know.
Hey, you're a tough guy.
Absolutely a record. It's absolutely a record. What is the date? Go ahead.
Actually, the first one is actually something I probably should have said earlier. and I just wanted to just put it out, just put it on the record, if you would. And it had to do with the beer garden. And again, one of the rationale given was that it was and I know people are gone, and maybe not everybody's going to hear it, but you know, they said it was a gathering place for residents to drink beer. And when I commented on that, I said my position on that is well known, and that may have been a bit presumptuous of me to say that. And so I just wanted to state for the record what my position is. And basically, Maple Woodstock being a family event, one which is attended by many children. You know, I see kids hula hooping and throwing frisbees and playing ball and things like that. While I understand that the beer garden is situated towards the rear of Maple Woodstock, ostensibly to make it separate from the rest of the venue, I still feel that its presence, in fact, perhaps in some sense, the demarcation of it will encourage curiosity on the part of kids who can't wait to be older and old enough to maybe go into the beer garden. And so from the perspective of it being something that encourages alcohol consumption, perhaps by children, I just don't feel that it's appropriate to have a beer garden at a family event like Maple Woodstock. And so I said that my position was well known, and I realize that may have been presumptuous on my part to assume that people knew that, but I just wanted to state that for the record. Number two, I noted today, actually, and this is actually a question, the post office. I was actually in the village today, Maplewood Avenue, and I noted that the front walk of the post office is not shoveled. I mean, it's like somebody just went over it with a, heavy object almost. I mean, it's not cleared at all. I mean, just right by the steps right there, that's maybe clear, but the whole front walk across all the way down to the parking lot that goes by Village Coffee is just completely snow covered. And my concern is that, with the anticipated ice and freezing over tonight, sleet, freezing rain, hasn't been shoveled. I'm not sure whose responsibility it is, but I mean, to me, that could be very hazardous. And so I don't know whose responsibility it is. I assume it would be the post office or something, but I just think that that's, especially being that it's in the middle of Maplewood Village, just seems like that's something that should be addressed.
The answer is it is the Postal Service. It's their responsibility under the lease. And Mr. Manning is making a note, and I'm sure the inspectors will be out there and policing it appropriately. And my wife already gave me this lecture.
Okay. So that's number two. Number three, this is actually something that was on the Maplewood website, but for those who may not have seen it, just wanted to bring to people's attention that the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security has developed a public awareness campaign to encourage New Jersey residents and visitors to report suspicious activity to trained personnel. If you see something, say something, which is something that our police chief is very fond of saying. So building on that, they've actually developed a mobile application titled Safe New Jersey. And the Safe New Jersey app enables residents of New Jersey and surrounding states to instantly report suspicious activity from a smartphone or mobile device, which is sent directly to the counterterrorism watch personnel who are on duty 24 hours a day. You can go to the iTunes Store or Google Play if you have an Android device, and if you search for Safe, SAFE-NJ, you will see the app. The app is free for download, and I encourage everyone to download the app. That's number three. And number four is not to be outdone. I'd also like to announce that the Maplewood Police Department is now also using a new communication service called Nixle to send important, valuable community information directly to residents using the latest technology. Now, Nixle is a free service used by over 5,000 public safety agencies to enable residents to get trusted alerts from their local police. And having signed up for the service myself, I can also tell you that this also gives you information from the New Jersey State Police as well. All residents of Maplewood can immediately begin receiving information via text message or email, and going to the website by registering at www.nixle.com. And Nixle, I was going to say that later, but I'll say it right now. Nixle is N-I-X-L-E. So www.nixle.com. Nixle builds on the foundations of other public-to-public communications vehicles like Twitter and Facebook and MySpace and local blogs, but it also adds a key component, security. When citizens receive information about public safety issues from the Maplewood Police Department by Nixle, they'll know that the information is accurate and can be trusted. One also neat feature I'd like to point out is that you can also decide whether you want to receive email or text messages or both, and you can actually sign up for getting information about an area that's as small as a quarter mile in radius. So if you only want to receive information about your particular neighborhood, you can actually get down to that finite level of detail. So I'd like to encourage all Maplewood residents to sign up for the service. Once again, it's www.nixle, that's spelled Nixle.com. It's free, and it's a welcome addition, I believe, to Maplewood. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Just in case folks are wondering, while you were explaining what was going on, I just signed up for it. It's very easy to sign up for.
Good.
Did you want to mention your office hours as your fifth?
Oh, that's my fifth. That breaks the record, or is it still? Okay.
No. I think after two broke the record.
Okay, all right. Yes, my office hours are next Tuesday, February 11th, and I'll be holding them as usual from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. at the Hilton branch of the Maplewood Library on Springfield Avenue, from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock p.m. once again. Thank you.
And as Public Safety Chair, do you want to mention that the 13th we'll be having police awards?
Is that for public as well? Yeah. Okay, yes. Actually, on the 13th, that's Thursday. What time is that? 7 o'clock p.m.? 7 o'clock p.m. We'll actually be holding awards for Maplewood police who have distinguished themselves in the line of duty, and that is open to the public. And we're actually having that at police headquarters. So do it on their turf.
6 items. Please write that down, Mrs. Fritzen. 6 items.
My first Nixle alert says that the schools are closed tomorrow.
Okay, I have one item, and that's office hours that I'm having next Tuesday, February 11th, 7 p.m. right here, 7 to 8 p.m. And I believe that is it. Let's have a motion to adjourn and move into the meeting of the local alcoholic beverage control.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you again. The Township Committee meeting is adjourned. We'll be meeting again here Tuesday, February 18th at 7:30 p.m. And we're now moving into the local Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission meeting.
Come on up.
Come on up. Come on up. All right, you know what's getting just getting tired. Tired and cold. Tired and cold.
Council, if you want to go to the podium,
over there.
probably be easier up there. You've been sitting all night, so stretching your legs probably won't hurt you. Would you enter your appearance, please?
Sure. Kunal Shah from the firm of Roger & Resin on behalf of Maplewood Wine.
Move down a little closer.
Yeah, we need you to just be a little closer to the mic, thanks.
Pick it up a little bit, yeah.
Thank you. Kunal Shah from the firm of Roger & Resin on behalf of Maplewood Wine LLC.
Members of the Alcoholic Beverage Commission, this is a person-to-person transfer of the Village Wine Shop, 163 Maplewood Avenue, Maplewood, New Jersey, printer retail distribution license to Maplewood Wine Shop LLC at that same location. Who's going to testify, Counsel?
Mr. Rakesh Patel, he's a member of
Mr. Patel, would you please stand up, raise your right hand? Please stand up, raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Don't be nervous. We haven't lost anyone at one of these hearings yet. Please, sit down. We're all friends. You're coming to Maplewood.
Yeah.
You're gonna be part of the community. So they can hear you, okay? These people have to hear what you're gonna say.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Patel, do you have any experience in the wine and liquor business?
Yes.
Counsel, you all right with me questioning you?
Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, I worked in my uncle's business. He's owning a business in a liquor store. I worked over there.
So you've worked in the business. Your first time you're gonna own a license? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And one of the questions I have to ask you is, where did you get the funds to purchase this license? Where do they come from?
Those are my earned money and savings.
Is this your savings account? Okay. And this is an LLC, counsel?
Yes, sir.
And how many members in the LLC?
We have two members, Mr. Rakesh Patel, who's testifying, and his wife, Ms. Preeti Patel.
Okay, so it's Mr. and Mrs. Patel are the two members?
Yes.
And what is their ownership interest in that? Who is there one who controls, or are they 50-50?
It's 50-50.
50-50?
Yes.
Okay. It's my understanding, Mrs. Fritzen, that the fingerprint cards have come back and there have been no objection by the police department. Is that correct?
Correct. Full report, fine.
Okay. And have you had an opportunity to run the business at all since you've become a contract purchaser?
Yes.
Okay, and you're familiar with the business?
Yes.
Okay. Members of the committee, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I remember when we transferred this license to the person that you just...
I have no questions.
No questions at all.
No? Everyone, no questions from the board? Okay. It is my understanding, members of the committee, that the applicant has in all respects complied with the requirements of the statutes of the state of New Jersey and with the ordinances of the Township of Maplewood essential to the transfer of the license. The financial information has been disclosed. The applicant has submitted a sworn statement affirming that they will assume all outstanding obligations of the transferor. You understand that?
Yes.
You understand that you, by acquiring this license, I'm sure your attorney is taking care to protect you, but that you do have a legal obligation, if he missed something, to pay these. You understand that?
Yes.
And I'm sure he hasn't missed a damn thing. But I'm just saying. Okay. Said applicant has published December 12, 2014 and 2013 and December 19, 2013 in Maplewood South Orange News Record its intentions of transfer. No objections were received in writing by Mrs. Fritzen, the clerk of the local ABC. Is there anyone who objects, who is present, objects to the transfer of this license? Members of the committee, no. There are no objections. Once again, members of the committee, any questions? Seeing none, will you entertain a resolution on the transfer?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Person-to-person transfer. Be it resolved that application having been made to the Township Committee of the Township of Maplewood to transfer Maplewood Village Shop LLC, 163 Maplewood Avenue, Maplewood, New Jersey, from Village Wine Shop, 163 Maplewood Avenue, Maplewood, New Jersey, plenty retail license number 071144002001, issued to Village Wine Shop. Said applicant having in all respects complied with the requirements of the statutes of the state of New Jersey and ordinances of the municipality essential to the transfer of such license, and said applicant having submitted a sworn statement affirming that he will assume all outstanding obligations of the transferor. The Township Clerk of the Township of Maplewood is hereby authorized and directed as agent of the Township Committee to transfer on behalf of the Township Committee plenary recent retail distribution license number 071144001004 issued to Maplewood Wine Shop LLC is approved by the Maplewood Police Department. The foregoing license is to become effective as of February 4th, and the license will expire on June 30th, 2014. Now, in Maplewood and attached to the license are certain requirements or limitations. I'm going to just ask you to understand that you understand these and that you agree to them. The licensee will voluntarily post signs and notices at their cash registers which will advise customers that consumption of alcoholic beverages on the streets of Maplewood is forbidden by the Township ordinance. Maplewood will prepare and distribute the signs and notices to be posted. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. Licensee will not offer straws or extra paper bags to their customers. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Licensee will not offer free cups to customers. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Licensee will not ice down 50 milliliter, 100 milliliter, or 200 milliliter bottles of liquor or individual cans of beer. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Licensee agrees to maintain the areas in and about their store and keep them free from debris. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
No liquor may be sold in any container commonly called a miniature. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
No beer may be sold in a single quart-sized container. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Maplewood will continue to enforce the ordinances involved and work with the licensee regarding any complaints they have. Licensee pledges to cooperate with Maplewood and agrees to institute the voluntary measures described above. Is that true? All right. The license is subject to the rules and regulations heretofore or hereafter adopted by the governing body, as well as by all other lawful authority, as well as the statutes of the state and federal government in such cases made and provided. Let me just, for the record, have a motion again on that, please.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, Mayor?
Anyone have a discussion? We hope that you're very successful.
Thank you.
Looking forward
If I
to
may
it.
call the roll. Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Although we didn't hear anything from your wife. Your wife is 50%.
50%.
You know, 50%, she owns 50%. She
say it just as much.
My guess is she probably has 50% interest here. So would you like to say anything? No? Okay.
All right, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right,
Good luck.
thank you very much. Your job was
Congratulations
easy,
to
right?
the Weisers, too. Good luck.
Congratulations.
You don't have to adjourn or anything?
Move we adjourn the ABC?
Yeah.
All in favor?
All right.
Good luck.